Hey guys, so while I've been collecting parts for when I can go full steam ahead on the 964 restoration, I've been looking at accent colors, and that's when I got this idea. What if I used Kevlar instead of carbon in the same process that I've created my forged carbon Nismo shift knob with? So in this video we'll find out if forged Kevlar is any good. Let's get started. Because it turns out it isn't quite easy to find Kevlar flakes or even tow, I just opted to get a meter of 300 grams 2x2 twill weave Kevlar. I started cutting it like you normally can with carbon, with a simple rotary cutting tool on a cutting board. But unfortunately, this is where all my problems started. Turns out Kevlar is not as brittle as carbon. So instead I've gone at it with the Kevlar shears, which worked reasonably well, but it took a long time to get everything cut up. After having cut all the strips, I needed to carefully pick them apart, taking care not to fray them too much. I'm using my Nismo shift knob mold, from which I made a fantastic looking forged carbon piece. All I had to do was reprint the top piece, which I broke last time while demolding, but it was only around 150 grams of PETG. No biggie. I cleaned up the rest of the mold to have it ready to be waxed up, and I'm giving the new piece the same treatment as before, just a quick sand with 120 grit. This time I'm using a spray-on wax, but truth is you don't really need it at all. You can get away with only using PVA for this. When the wax was dry, I added the PVA coat and moved on to assembly. I gave the mold an additional coat of PVA on the outside as well, so I can remove all the epoxy that will be squeezing out. Initially I was planning to use the same measurements as with forged carbon, but it turned out it was way too much material, and after some research I found that Kevlar has a very different density from carbon. Since I have not seen this done before, I extrapolated a value for forged Kevlar and landed on a density value of 1.2, meaning the finished part should end up at around 66 grams from the 55cc volume. This time I'm using an infusion resin as opposed to a laminating resin because it has a low viscosity, meaning it should be way easier to squeeze out. I'm again going for the 60-40 composite to resin ratio. As soon as I had as much composite filled up as the mold could handle, I tried to get the mixture away from the walls before closing the mold. I got out 2 pieces of wood and some clamps, and I left it to harden overnight. Again, it was fairly tough to get it out of the top piece, but I already knew that it was gonna have to be sacrificed. Once it was out, I cleaned it up with some warm water to get rid of the wax and PVA, and then I tried to get rid of the excess on the center line. But then and there I realized once again how terrible it is to work with Kevlar. After that, I tried sanding it up by hand, but the surface became all fuzzy and frayed. Since I did not have too many options, I went all in going through the grits. I gave it a coat of laminating epoxy in the hopes of stabilizing the fiber so I can continue to work on it. The second round of sanding has gone a tiny bit better, and here I was hoping I could get a solid result. I gave it 2 more coats of laminating epoxy so I can give it a fine sand and polish. And this is the result. I could still do with a proper clear coat to bring out the shine a bit better, but truthfully, I'm not certain I'll be using this part. So, do I believe it is worth it considering the amount of hassle and the way it looks in the end? I'm not convinced. The way the material handles is one thing, but I feel like it doesn't have the same flashy effect as forged carbon does. Feel free to let me know what you think though. Now at least we know what forged Kevlar looks like, and if you still want to do something like that with either Kevlar or carbon, just check out my previous video on this with all calculations and more tips. As always, thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. Bye.